Welcome to the Amazon Fanatics program. This is our weekly podcast where we look at what is going on in the world of Amazon, eBay, e-commerce across the board, both in changes to the platforms and things sellers can do to improve their profit line, and all the tips and tricks that you're going to need to know to start a business on Amazon or to take your business from, say about here to about here. There is, as we've discussed on our tips videos and in our educational program, a lot of noise in this space. There is a ton of people and ton of sellers who have started podcasts and have started videocasts and who are out there, talking about their experiences and how they treat Amazon and how they treat e-commerce as a basic way to show you the process. And we're doing something similar. Ours is a little different. We are experts at influencer marketing and e-commerce that brings celebrities and social influencers into private labeling, into branding products, and making sure that they use their influence to sell e-commerce. But we want to make sure that we at the Amazon Fanatics program are really here for every type of Amazon seller and every type of e-commerce seller. When we go out and we look for experts to talk to, we are always looking for the people who not only sound like they know what they're talking about, but who have been there, who are clear, who are concise. And one of the names that really has always stood out for us has been Scott Voelker. If you have not listened to Scott Voelker over at theamazingseller.com, you are missing out. You should bookmark them as soon as this podcast is over. You should go visit Scott's site. He does a free class. He's doing a giveaway. He's got a whole series of how-tos. He brings on great guests. And so we couldn't be happier to have Scott join us today. He is also a fan of one of our favorite programs here, Shark Tank, and we're going to get into later who his favorite shark is and why. But more importantly, Scott started with nothing. And he took nothing, it was literally $0, and in 90 days, turned it into $40,000, and over the course of a year, turned it into $300,000 in sales. And so first I want to welcome Scott to the program, but Scott, tell us how you did that. Tell us how you started from nothing and got to, in 90 days, $40,000, but also how you got started in this process and how you came to the Amazon e-commerce world.
Yeah, well, my story goes back a ways, but as far as like the, getting introduced to Amazon or e-commerce in general, because really, people need to understand, like, Amazon is a channel. E-commerce has been around for a long time. I was selling stuff on eBay way back when, and my wife and I were kind of doing a little retail arb on that. We didn't even know what we were doing, and we were doing it. And then now that I look back at it, we were actually selling these little cedar 4-foot bridges that we purchased at this place called the Christmas Tree Shop, which they sell stuff all year long, but I don't know why they're called Christmas Tree Shop. And my wife's seen these bridges, and she's like, we should really look at and see how much they're going for on Amazon, or not Amazon, on eBay, because we can pick them up for like $25-$30. They were selling for $140. And we bought like 20 of them. I loaded up the minivan and away we went. And we had like 20 bridges, our first order, and we sold them all. And actually helped pay for my kids' private schooling at the time. And that's going back, my son just graduated. So we're going back when he was in like kindergarten. So it was a long time ago. But to answer your question as far as like getting introduced to the Amazon thing, I started hearing a lot of people talking about this retail arb thing, and I was already selling digital products. My wife and I are former photographers, so we built a photography business from scratch in our hometown, built that into a pretty successful business, and then I started hearing about people teaching about it, and that kind of introduced me to selling stuff online. I sold some Photoshop CDs as far as like how to do your Photoshop edits and stuff like that. And I started selling CDs, and that's what kind of got me introduced. But then Amazon, I started hearing about people are selling like products. How can you sell your own? I'm not a major brand. And then I started hearing about retail arb. Well, I thought about retail arb for about 3 minutes, and then I soonly found out that it was a lot of work for me because personally I had a lot of other things going on and I didn't want more work. I didn't want it to be like a job. And then I started hearing about private labeling, and that's what got me excited because it's kind of like really close to being a digital product because you're sending in inventory of the same product, and then once you run out, you just order more. So that's kind of my quick but long story for you.
Yeah, it's interesting you say that. We were actually going to get into private labeling a little later in the conversation, but since you just brought it up, I do want to kind of touch on that topic. There's been a lot of discussion recently as to whether or not private labeling is still the way to go. There's competition from abroad. There's some questions about whether or not there's going to be counterfeit private labeling. And there's some questions as to whether or not private labeling has really jumped the shark, or if there's still a future in it. So when you look at the private labeling, or white labeling as some people call it, and you look a couple years down the road, or even a couple months down the road, where do you see the future of private labeling in e-commerce, and where do you see it specifically as it relates to what people are doing on Amazon?
It's a great question, and it's funny because I just did an interview literally before I got on with you with a $10 million seller who's been doing this before private labeling was even private labeling. We're talking going back to probably like 10 years ago, and he's a very successful guy. He's been doing it, and I had this conversation with him because I'm all about not just jumping on like a wave and then, like watching it disappear and then saying, now what? I want to build real businesses. And Amazon to me is a starting point. And I think that private labeling, that's been happening even before Amazon. Like we've all went to the grocery store, right? We've all seen the generic brand of ketchup, and then we've seen Hunt's, right? The store brand is not made by the store. It's made by a company that makes ketchup for everyone in the market, right? Here I just moved to South Carolina. We have Harris Teeter. That's what they're called. Up home, where I used to live, it's called Hannaford or Price Chopper. There's like all these grocery stores. Well, they all have their own brand. It's a private label product. It's been happening for years. My father always was wanting to buy the cheap brand because it was cheaper, and I always wanted the better kind of cereal. It's the same difference. So the way I look at it is it's a way for us right now to be able to start and validate and verify a product quickly without having a website, without having traffic, without having an email list, that we can really get on and on a platform and start selling. But that's not where it should start, and I've never said that that's where it should or that's where it should end. That should never be where it ends. That's where it should start, and then you should continue to grow, and you should be thinking about a brand, not just the product, and how can you serve a market and all of that stuff. I've been at this a long time with digital products, my own, selling in the photography space, and it's always came down to very simple stuff. It's like help people, and then educate them, and then if you can help them through products, whether it's physical or digital, it all makes sense. Everyone wins, right? So it's discovering and kind of paying attention to a market, solving a problem, and then bringing that to the market. And Amazon is just a channel. And this guy that I just talked to, Chad Rubin, who he created a software called Scubana, which is for medium to large size businesses. But he basically said that Walmart just opened up their program to allow us private labelers to start selling on there. Not just us, but basically they want products. They want to create their Walmart. Well, we can take our product that's selling on Amazon, and guess what? We can sell it on Walmart.com now, and Jet.com, and all of these other platforms. And that's, I think, people are they're so focused on just Amazon, they're forgetting about all the other things. eBay, people actually sell stuff on eBay still. Imagine that.
Well, maybe it's about time we give Scott another couple dollars and see if he can't get from $0 to $40K in 90 days again, and restart the challenge. Just a reminder, we are talking to Scott Voelker from theamazingseller.com, and you're going to want to go over there. You're going to want to listen to his podcast. He lays out all kinds of things about how to get started, how to private label, and how to make sure that your business succeeds throughout all of his podcasts. And you'll see as you listen to them that there's an evolution in what he's learning and what he's passing along over there at theamazingseller.com. Now, Scott, we've talked a little bit right now about private labeling and getting started. What are the top line? And obviously, we would send people over to the website for, the full kind of course on what you're doing. But from a standpoint of when people first start, what are the 3 or 4 top line tricks or tips or suggestions you would have so that they can have success and avoid some of the pitfalls that you've seen, other people make?
Well, the first thing, and again, my mind has changed a little bit since we got started, because in the beginning, you're just excited to get something launched. But right now, honestly, for me personally, Amazon gives us all of the clues that we could ever want, right? They're treating us as a customer when we go there. So all of these things they're throwing at us, these related searches, frequently bought together, all that stuff is there. So for me, it's really about now, how can I either solve a problem or add value to a market that is either really passionate or that is struggling? How can I serve that market? So to me, it's really about the market first. And it's funny, I talk about this on one of my workshops about like going to the supermarket and looking at the magazine rack. Like those are markets of people that are buying products, right? If you see the woodworking magazine, there's products in there for that market. So I would say start by looking at your own set of passions, your problems, your struggles. And I always tell people to do like a touch list, like do a daily touch list. Like wake up in the morning, take a notepad with you and just take it with you everywhere you go and just write every single thing you touch on a daily basis. And then also write down the things that really annoy you or things that you wish that wouldn't be that way, or why do I have to do this because they don't make it this long or whatever, right? And just pay attention a little bit more. I mean, right now, I think with the know-how that we all have, and as you go through this, because you're not going to know it overnight, right, but as you start to go through this, you're going to start to become more aware. I was just sitting down with a friend of mine that I met through this move. I just moved to South Carolina, for those of you that don't know, and I met this woman through the move. Actually, she's a blogger, a very successful blogger, but she had no idea about private labeling and stuff. So now I'm able to kind of piggyback off of what she's already done and created a market around, and now we can find products to serve to her market, which she had no idea you could do, by the way. But she's a very successful blogger with a pretty successful or pretty sizable audience. So I think it really comes down to a market that you can serve products to and trying to understand that market, whether you're in that market or not. If you're in the market, it makes it easier because you're passionate about it, right? You want to learn more about it, or they're your problems or your family's problems. So that's what I would say, like top level, that's where I would start. And then I would create a massive list of I would just do like a brain dump, and I would just start writing everything that comes to mind, whether it makes sense or not. And then you start going through the research phases. Are these products even selling? Are they not? And some people come to me, they're like, Scott, well, I found a product. It's not even listed on Amazon yet, and it's going to be a great product. And I'm like, let's go back to that product, right? Let's go back to that one, but maybe you can serve a product to that market right now that's already selling, and then we can come back and we can throw that product in once we have our own kind of e-com or our own email list or our own way of trying to promote this product to them, or at least asking for their feedback.
Yeah, it's interesting. You just mentioned the blog and that method of it, and that's really what we do here at Fanatics Media, taking influencers and putting them together with e-commerce, whether through white labeling products or putting their name or sponsoring a product, but bringing those two worlds together through social media, influencing, blogging, and it's been a really interesting program. It's been fascinating to watch the reaction of these bloggers and these social media influencers as they realize that e-commerce is one more avenue that their popularity can earn them money and appeal to their fan base.
It's really cool. And let me just say something right there too for anyone that's watching this. It's like, understand too that while you're going through this process, you might not have success on that first product or second or even third, but the knowledge that you learned from that, you could possibly do what you're doing and then connect with someone that does have that winning product, and then you bring it to market, and now you're a partnership, right? So there's other ways to making money online than just having your own product. So I just want people to be aware that once you learn this stuff, you start to see these opportunities around you, and you're like, we need to talk. And that really can work well.
Yeah, it's interesting. You're hearing that a lot out of Silicon Valley right now, where they're saying, don't go get your MBA. Start a company, try the entrepreneurship road, and your first business may not take, your second business may not take. By the time you get to your third and fourth business, you're going to hit on one of them, because what you are learning in starting these businesses and going down the entrepreneurial track is more valuable in the grand scheme and in the long run than what you are learning in your MBA class. And in essence, that's what Scott is saying. If you're just tuning in, we are talking to Scott Voelker from theamazingseller.com. Scott has a workshop coming up. You can register for it at theamazingseller.com/workshop. You should go do that right now. Actually, not right now. When we're done here, head over there. Make sure you register for that. You're going to learn a lot, and it's a really, really great program. Scott, we touched on it just a little earlier, but I want to dive into it just a little deeper. When people first get started, talk to me about the common mistakes that you most often see that are really easily avoidable.
One of the biggest mistakes I think I see, there's a couple different mistakes, but one of the biggest ones is in the product research phase, right? I think people all try to go after the cookie cutter items. They try to go after the next silicone spatula or the next barbecue gloves or the next garlic press, which I talk a lot about on my podcast. So, that's what I would say is like, don't just go after what someone else is selling because it's selling, right? Go after something that you can either make better. And a great tip here for people, a little golden nugget here is like, to find out what's wrong with a current product that might still be selling okay is to look at all those negative reviews that Amazon allows us to see, right? So dig through those negative, those 3, 2, and 1 star reviews, and you'll be amazed at what you find. It could be a little tiny thing that you can make your product better, and then you are going to be able to do that much better in the marketplace. Or you might say, I really like this product, but I wish it came with this and this, and then it would be a complete package. Well, guess what? Now you create a bundle, and now all of a sudden you've got something that's unique, and it's yours, and you're the only one maybe selling it at that time. But you see what I'm saying? So. Yeah. I see a lot of in the product research stage because that's really where you're setting the groundwork for your success. And it's not just going after something that's easy. Here's another thing. If you go to, and we're not going to get into maybe sourcing, but if you go to like Alibaba, which I think everyone that is getting into this kind of knows what it is, but anyone that goes to Alibaba, if you see that all of these different suppliers are offering like the same spatula, don't go after that spatula, right? Because everyone else is going to be able to get that same spatula, right? So what you might do is get a list of 10 suppliers that offer a spatula, and then you can maybe reach out to those companies and say, I've got an idea that I want to make a better spatula, right, if that's what you were going to do. I don't recommend going into spatulas, but if you were, that's what I would say. Don't go and just grab the first one that you see and want to launch that. That's probably one of the quickest ways to fail in that process. I see that, and I see also when people get started too, they hear of all of the different things that you have to do, and they get overwhelmed, and then they just don't start. So that's a big one.
Yeah, I mean, that's one of the first things we tell people when they ask us what type of product they should get into. Avoid electronics. You simply have no idea who's making them, the quality of the product, whether or not the product is going to last long term. It's not in your control. There's too much out of your control. If you put a spatula up on Amazon, you know exactly what you're getting. If you put, a hoverboard, or you put, the latest gizmo or the latest gadget up there, you're gambling. Yeah, it's cool to want to have the next hot product and be on the cover of Wired and sell out all over Amazon. But the reality is the guys who really know what they're doing in the electronics industry and in the gadget industries are already on that path. And they have testing capabilities over their own products. You don't. If you order from China an electronic product and you have no ability to fix it, you don't know how to troubleshoot it, you're sitting there waiting to have a ton of returns. You're almost begging for a problem.
Yeah, and that's a great point. I always tell people too, anything with an on-off switch, because here's the thing, right? If you get 1,000 units shipped and there's a little, piece of solder that didn't get connected, and now that thing doesn't work, guess what? Toast. You've got 1,000 units sitting in Amazon, and you're not going to know until you start getting those negative reviews, and then you got to yank them all off the shelf. Yeah, that's a great point, and that's definitely a recommendation that I always give people just starting is electronics. And you mentioned hoverboards, which is funny because a lot of people want to ride that wave, and people in the malls are selling them and stuff. But one way that you could get around that, if you wanted to go into that market, which I wouldn't advise you do, but if thinking about like something like that, like a hoverboard is like really hot right now, right? Well, and again, you're trending. But if you were to go in that market, the only way that I would do it is I would create like a carrying bag for the hoverboard, right? I wouldn't create the hoverboard. I would create the carrying bag for it, or maybe the grease for the fittings, or whatever, right? That's what I would do versus coming up with the hoverboard. The guy I just interviewed sells vacuum filters, right? And basically he started from his father's company that they sold. They did vacuum repairs. Well, he now does $10 million a year in vacuum cleaner, filters, right? But it's kind of like what he's done. He didn't create the new vacuum or the Dyson. He's creating filters that replace the Dyson filters, right? So that's what I'm saying. Like, don't go out there and create the thing maybe, but you can create the accessories for the thing.
Well, and that's why it's so important, Scott, to be aware of trends. You're right, you're not going to sell the hoverboard. But if you're already in that space, in skateboard pads or helmets or safety gear or anything that would go along with a hoverboard, you've got to go back into your keywords and make sure that hoverboards and all the associated terminology is in there so you can take advantage of the trend. Your product may already be up there and you're not even thinking about the fact that, oh, well, that's something I can just expand into a different market without having to change anything but my listing. So, make sure you're aware of what's hot and what's selling well. So if your product is in anywhere connected to that space, you can hop on into it pretty easily. We're talking with Scott Voelker from theamazingseller.com, and he's got a lot of podcasts about how to pick a product. Scott, we hear a lot of people who want to get into selling on Amazon, selling e-commerce, and they're not exactly sure how to pick a product, and they start one by one, hand by hand, looking up every single detail of where does the product rank, what is its sales, how do I find this, that, and the other thing. We've gotten to the point now where technology has, in essence, taken that away from us, and thankful for it. There are a ton of products out there, apps and browser extensions and external software going from everywhere from a couple bucks a month to thousands of dollars they're asking for their software. With so much out there, what are the technologies that you really trust, that you say do a good job, and that you would recommend to people who are starting this Amazon journey to make their life easier and to not really get hoodwinked on cost?
Yeah, well, and you're right. As something starts to become like a hot thing, right? Everyone wants to jump into the SaaS, world where they have the SaaS products, and I've been really, really skeptical about these because I know kind of how that all works and stuff. But I really only recommend people that I believe in, that I trust, and that I use their products. Well, there was really not a lot of products when I started. I got to be honest. So I was doing product research by going through each listing, looking at the bestseller rank. Doing the little 999 trick where you would kind of see how many units they're selling per day and all that stuff. And then this app called Jungle Scout came out, and I was actually in a beta round of that. Again, a little not sure. I didn't know Greg Mercer at the time, who I know well now. Him and I are good buddies. But once he created that tool, it really solved a major problem for me, and that was the hours it took to go through each listing one by one and then track it in a spreadsheet. So I would say my number one tool would be Jungle Scout. That would be it. Now there's some other ones that have come out, and I guess they do an okay job, but I've just heard, I've tested a couple, but just that the numbers, the actual data that's being pushed back, which is the most important, right? We want to know estimated sales for the month. If that's off, then everything's off. I've noticed that Jungle Scout is the closest, and if anything, they're undershooting it a little bit, which I'd rather than overshoot. And I'm not by much. I'm like, if they're saying that they're selling 1,000 a month, it might be actually 1,200, something like that. So it's nothing huge, but it definitely makes a difference. If it was telling you you're selling 1,200 and you're really only selling like 600, that's a problem.
Or the other way, where it says it's 20,000.
Yeah, exactly. So that would be one that I would say is it's because that's your first step, right? Is to find products. But rather than go out there and find a product that's going to give you all the products. Now there's another extension that he created called it's called the web app for Jungle Scout, and that one there, I use it for discovery, but I don't use that product, if that makes sense. What I'll do is I'll drill into that, and a way that people can do this, like let's say for example, whether you use an app or not, if you see that a brand has a product that's selling well, you can click into the brand itself and see all of the products that they are selling, and then you can do a Jungle Scout basically a filter run on that. So this way here you can see all of the products that they're selling across their brand and see all of the ones that are selling really well. So this way here you can get product ideas by looking at maybe the first product is selling really well, maybe it's really competitive and you don't want to go in that space, but you can see similar products that they're selling that are doing good, but maybe not as much competition. So that would be, that's like number one. Like I think that in the product research, you're not going to go anywhere unless you get a product picked.
Yeah, we're also at Fanatics Media, also big fans of Jungle Scout and fans of Greg. And we like the platform. We like what it shows you. We like the browser extension, but most of all, it's affordable. It's a reasonably priced product. We get pitches since we've kind of gotten into this world. We've gotten pitches almost daily, certainly weekly. Oh, here's this software for $2,000 or $2,500 or $4,000 or $5,000, and it's just out of the range of most new sellers, and it's unnecessary when you can get a software like Jungle Scout, and there are some other really good ones, but a software like Jungle Scout at such a significantly smaller price and significantly less expensive, which I think is good for your bottom line. I want to switch gears here. We're talking to Scott Voelker from theamazingseller.com. Scott, Amazon just had their biggest Prime Day in history. It would be huge. And so that's guaranteed to keep coming back. And we're just now, 4 or 5 months away from Cyber Monday and Black Friday and Christmas sales. And so when Amazon sellers start looking ahead on the calendar and they start getting ready for these big one-day events, what do they need to know? What kind of approach should they be taking, and what should the strategy be as far as outreach goes and as planning goes for these big one-day events?
Okay, you bring up some really good points, and you're right. Amazon has done a great job with their marketing. They're great at getting excitement and all this stuff. But I think one big takeaway I would tell anyone: don't count on those days. Don't count on Prime Day.
Why is that?
Don't count on fourth quarter, because you're banking on the big day. Wouldn't you rather have consistent sales throughout the year? And I'd skip that one day if I could just have consistent sales, so I didn't have to say and hold my breath and hope that I have a good Prime Day, or hope that I have a good Black Friday. I personally wouldn't bank on that. And again, I wouldn't bank on Amazon as being the only channel too, right? Currently right now, internally, I'm doing other things outside of Amazon to build out my brands. They're not going to be just relying on Amazon. They're going to be having their own e-commerce channel, so I can sell it right directly through my own website, so I can control the sales funnel and all that stuff. So I would say anyone out there right now, don't bank on fourth quarter sales, and don't let that be your business model. Let's just say that. Now, with that being said, there are some things that you can do to prepare for Prime Day or for any big day, and that is, number one, trying to figure out what that market has trended in the past. Now, you've probably used the tool camel.com. That's just a free tool. It gives you history on certain SKUs and products. The other one is the good old-fashioned Google Planner tool. You can see trends, Google Trends, and that type of stuff, just to see if your product might not do well in Prime Day because it's just the seasonal item that's not going to fall good in there. And the reason why I'm saying all this stuff is because you don't want to go and bank on that day and order 10,000 units and then get stuck with them, right?
Right.
That's a big mistake that a lot of people will make because they're hoping they're going to get invited to the Lightning deal. They're hoping that they're going to get the Prime Day deal. Try to plan. Again, if you don't bank on that one day as being the holy grail, then you're not going to be disappointed and you're not going to be holding your breath. The other thing you can do on a big day like that is ramp up your pay-per-click in Amazon. So inside of your Amazon account, make sure that you ramp up your pay-per-click on some of those campaigns that have been performing well. That would be it. Make sure that your listings are all fully optimized, obviously, because the sales that you get through that day will also help you rank in the future, because it's not just that day that's going to help you. If you get a bunch of sales that day, it's going to help you also in the weeks to come after, because of those sales. You're going to help rank and all of that stuff. So I would just say make sure things are in order. Make sure that you have enough inventory without taking on a huge risk that you say, well, if I don't sell this stuff, I'm stuck. And again, I would just go back to don't bank on those days.
Are those days actually, can they be somewhat of a negative in as much as you said, you put too much focus on those days, but then you also cut your prices so much that your profit margin goes down? Is there concern that all these big sales are actually going to end up helping Amazon but hurting the sellers? Yeah,
well, here's the way I look at it. Like, I had a buddy last year who got invited to a Lightning deal, and he did like 42,000 like that day. I had another guy this year who was actually in our class. He did 120,000 by noon. Now, he didn't lower his prices. These were just, I think he might have had like a slight discount, but it wasn't a Lightning deal on those sales. So because of that, actually I take that back. One of them might have been, but it helped the other sales. Like once you get the one, it's going to help your other ones because people are going to get introduced to your product line. But Yes, I agree with you. If you have your sales lower and then you're converting, your conversion rate's going to go up. But also, once you then raise your prices back to normal, your conversion rate will go down, and that could hurt your ranking. And that's why there's been a little bit of misunderstanding there in the marketplace too. And even myself, I thought this is like when you start running out of inventory to start jacking the price. Well, that can also hurt you because Amazon's looking at the conversion rate, not necessarily the price, because they just want sales. Right. But once you start to slow your sales down by raising your price, guess what? Your conversion rate is going down. That means that Amazon is also going to not rank you as well. So you need to pay attention to that stuff. It's a balancing act. And I had a few people say before Prime Day, they're like, Scott, what would you do? Would you lower your price or would you raise your price so you can get more? And I'm like, honestly, I wouldn't do much other than probably maybe lower my price by $1. I wouldn't do it by like $5, or I wouldn't do any of that stuff unless you're doing a lightning deal. You have to do whatever they want you to do. So I would just try to keep things in line. So this way here, you don't throw things too far out of skew. Again, that's my personal opinion.
Yeah, we're on with Scott Voelker again from The Amazing Seller. And Scott, first off, thank you so much for your time. You've been very generous. We only have a couple more questions for you. There's so much information out there. There's so many people who are sharing information about e-commerce and Amazon. I mean, we're on a podcast now. You have your own podcast, of course. You just finished an interview. So with all of the noise out there, what is it you hear most often that you say, whoa, that's not right. Don't do that. That's a bad idea. That's a terrible idea. Where is the misinformation that you see that people should really actively avoid?
Yeah, well, I think one of there's a few, but I mean, I would think that the biggest thing is if someone out there right now, and I'm not going to point fingers, but if anybody out there is saying like, number one, Amazon is the only thing that you should be focusing on as far as a business. So just build your business on Amazon and you'll be fine. I think that's setting yourself up for disaster, and I don't think that's a real business. I think it's a great start. But I don't think it's a real, true business. I think you have to go outside of that. And then I think people that are saying that Amazon is oversaturated and you can't launch products. I think that could just be for their self thing of saying like, I don't want any more competition. You know what I mean? Like, so there's two different sides there, right? I mean, you got people saying one thing and people saying the other. And then I think people saying also that you can't get on Amazon and sell a product for $20 anymore and make money. I still think there's opportunity there. And I think that just everyone likes the dark cloud and kind of it's kind of like news, right? I mean, everybody loves to hear like, what is not working, but then they kind of blow it out of proportion. I mean, we just recently did a little test on a few products that were $14.95 and they're selling fine. I've got another one that's $10.95. We source it for $1.50 and we sell about 15 to 20 units a day, making about $6 on that one thing. You know what I mean? So, I mean, it can still work. It's going to be a little harder, but I just think the information out there of people saying that it's quick, it's easy, and you don't have to have anything else other than an Amazon presence, I think is misguiding people.
Well, as we close down here with Scott, this last question, the most important question I would argue of the whole interview that we've had here, Scott, of all the sharks on Shark Tank, which is your favorite?
That's a great. You know what? I think Mark Cuban. I think he is. I mean, Mr. Wonderful's funny to watch, right? I
mean, you wouldn't want to work with him.
I don't think I'd want to work with. I think he's probably a cool guy off the camera. I think he's a cool guy anyway, but he's just got his own little character, right? He's a character on the show. But I think I like Mark. I think he knows the internet game a lot. He seems to think along the same lines as I would, I think, and that I would want to kind of work with because he knows social media. He knows all of those different things that, as Amazon sellers, again, a lot of us don't want to think about that because it seems like, well, I got to do it all. You don't have to do it all. You just have to understand there's other channels out there that you can tap into, and I think he gets it. So I think he'd be the one that I would like to work with, and I'd like to go to some of those basketball games.
Yeah, you probably get good seats. I mean, he
Good
knows a guy.
seats.
He knows a guy who knows a guy. He can
Yeah,
get you a little.
you know.
He can grease a palm or two. Well, it has been our pleasure to speak with Scott Voelker from theamazingseller.com. If you have not, again, please immediately go to iTunes, hop on the podcast, go over to his website, theamazingseller.com/workshop, and sign up because you're going to learn a ton. We're going to keep listening to Scott every week. We'll be sharing some of the things he says, and you can come back here to the Amazon Fanatics program and talk about influencer e-commerce and how we're using bloggers and celebrities and all of those bigger names in a different way to approach selling your products. So, Scott, thank you so much for your time today. We appreciate it, and wish you a ton of continued success with both your sales and with theamazingseller.com.
Hey, Justin, thank you so much. And I just wanted to say, to everyone out there listening, the biggest struggle is getting started, and it's your choice to do what you need to do. And I think you guys know what you need to do. So get out there and get started and take some action.